Have you ever reached a point in your life where you stopped trusting yourself? Not other people, yourself. Maybe you started second guessing every decision you made. Maybe your confidence disappeared. Maybe every mistake, every setback, every failure started feeling less like an event and more like proof that something was wrong with you. Because the truth is, when life hurts you enough times through rejection, betrayal, failure, disappointment, eventually something begins to change. You stop trusting people. And after a while, you stop trusting yourself too. And when that happens, even simple decisions can start feeling heavy because you're no longer asking, what do I want? You're asking, can I even trust myself to get this right? And honestly, I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have about self trust is that they think it means confidence. That if you trust yourself, you should always feel certain. You should always know what you're doing. You should always feel confident in your decisions. But I don't think that's what self trust actually is, because confidence and self trust are not the same thing. Self trust isn't believing you'll always make the right decision. Self trust is believing that even if things go wrong, you will figure it out. And I think a lot of people lose that relationship with themselves slowly, not overnight, through repeated setbacks, rejection, betrayal, criticism, failure. Life has a way of collecting evidence over time. And after enough painful experiences, your brain starts building stories around them. Stories like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I always mess things up. Maybe I can't trust my judgment. And when those stories repeat long enough, something starts changing eternally. You begin overthinking the simplest decisions. You seek reassurance more often. You stop trusting your instincts. You compare yourself to everyone else around you. And eventually, self doubt stops feeling like a feeling. It starts feeling like who you are. But honestly, I don't think self trust usually disappears all at once. I think it erodes slowly. And when I look back at my own life, I think that slow erosion started a lot earlier than I realized. For most of my school years, elementary school, junior high, high school, I was bullied, sometimes verbally, sometimes mentally, and sometimes physically. And when you experience those things repeatedly when you're young, you start learning lessons about yourself that aren't true. You start believing maybe you're different, maybe you're not good enough, maybe there's something wrong with you. And during that time, I had crippling social anxiety. It was incredibly difficult for me to make friends. But despite that, I still wanted everyone to like me. I was a people pleaser. I always had this open door policy with people because I sincerely cared. I wanted to be everyone's friend, and loyalty has always been a huge part of who I am. If I care about someone, I care deeply. I would go to the ends of the earth for people I love. But unfortunately, that also meant letting the wrong people into my life. Over the years, people have taken advantage of me in all shapes and forms, financially, emotionally, socially. And after enough experiences like that, you stop asking, why are people doing this? And you start asking, What's wrong with me? And honestly, I think that question, what's wrong with me, is where a lot of people start losing trust in themselves. Because repeated experiences have a way of shaping identity, not because they're always true, but because they happen often enough that they begin feeling true. I think a lot of people underestimate how much repeated experiences train the mind. If life keeps showing you rejection, eventually you expect rejection. If people repeatedly hurt you, eventually you expect betrayal. If things keep falling apart, eventually you start believing maybe you're the problem. And after enough setbacks, something dangerous starts happening. You stop viewing bad experiences as events and you start viewing them as evidence. Evidence that maybe you're not capable. Evidence that maybe you can't trust your judgment. Evidence that maybe every decision you make eventually ends badly. And when your brain starts collecting that kind of evidence for years, self doubt stops feeling temporary. It starts becoming part of your identity. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. And truthfully, when I look back at my own life, I think I spent a lot of time stuck there too. Because the setbacks didn't happen once, they happened repeatedly. And after enough repetition, those experiences stop feeling random. They start feeling personal. When I graduated university, I thought I had finally proven something to myself. After years of doubting my abilities, years of struggling with confidence, and years of questioning whether I was even capable, I finally had evidence that maybe I was wrong. I graduated with honors. I earned academic awards, and I finished with first class standing grades. And just for a moment, I sincerely believed things were changing. But what happened next started creating a different story in my head. Because despite the education, despite the work ethic, despite everything I had accomplished, opportunities still didn't come easily. And when enough doors keep closing, eventually you stop questioning the situation and you begin questioning yourself. Then later came other setbacks, financial setbacks, career setbacks, trust setbacks. And probably one of the hardest moments for me personally was opening my bookkeeping business. Because starting that business took confidence I didn't even think I had. I took a chance on myself. I trusted my education. I trusted my experience. And I trusted another person. And when everything fell apart, when the debt piled up, when the business failed, when my business partner disappeared and left me carrying everything alone, it didn't just damage my finances, it damaged my relationship with myself. Because when something hurts badly enough and repeatedly enough, eventually you stop asking, can I do this? And you start asking, can I trust myself anymore? And honestly, I think that's where my confidence truly collapsed. And honestly, for a long time, I thought confidence and self trust were the exact same thing. I thought if my confidence disappeared, then something inside me must have been broken too. But over time, I started realizing they may actually be two very different things. Because confidence usually comes after evidence, after success, after repetition, after things go right enough times that you start believing, okay, maybe I can do this. But self trust feels different. Self trust is what shows up before the evidence. It's the part of you that says, I'm scared, I'm uncertain, I might fail, but I'm going to try anyway. And when I started thinking about my own life struggle through that lens, something changed. Because maybe confidence wasn't what I actually lost. Maybe what I lost was my relationship with myself. And maybe that's why so many people stay stuck, because they keep waiting to feel confident again, when maybe what really needs rebuilding is trust. And when I really started thinking about that question, I realized something rather uncomfortable. Maybe there were moments in my life where self trust existed, and I just wasn't giving myself credit for it. Because if I'm being honest, going back to school after being out for 5 years terrified me. My confidence was not high. My work ethic in high school was not great either. Some subjects sincerely scared me. And when I first walked back into college after 5 years, I didn't walk in believing I was going to graduate with honors. I walked in just hoping I could survive. But somewhere along the way, something happened. I kept showing up. I kept pushing. I kept trying. And eventually, that turned into Dean's List recognition, academic awards, first class standing grades, things I sincerely never thought were possible for someone like me. And the same thing happened when I opened my bookkeeping business. And even though it ended very painfully, starting that business still required something from me. It required risk, belief, action. And now, even creating this channel feels very similar. Because if you had asked me months ago whether I believed I could do this, the answer probably would have been no. But here I am anyway, recording videos, sharing my story, trying. And maybe that's the strange thing about self trust. Sometimes it exists long before we recognize it. And if that's true, if self trust doesn't completely disappear, then maybe rebuilding it looks different than people expect. Because honestly, I don't think self trust comes back through motivation. I don't think it comes back through confidence hacks. And I definitely don't think it comes back by waiting until you're finally ready. Because if I waited until I felt ready, I probably would have been making this video right now. I think rebuilding self trust happens much slower than that. And honestly, much smaller than that too. For me, a lot of it started with micro commitments, whether that's getting out of bed when I said I would, recording one video, going for the walk, doing the task. Not because those things magically changed my life, but because every small action started creating evidence. I also had to learn boundaries, learning how to say no, learning that protecting your energy isn't selfish, learning that constantly sacrificing yourself for everyone else eventually damages your relationship with yourself too. I had to start listening to my instincts again, because after years of doubting yourself, even hearing your own voice becomes difficult. And maybe hardest of all, I had to start forgiving myself. for mistakes, bad decisions, missed opportunities, things I wish I handled differently. Because it's hard to trust someone you keep punishing, even when that person is yourself. And maybe that's what building self trust is, not becoming fearless, not suddenly believing in yourself every day, not waking up one morning magically healed. Maybe rebuilding self trust is simply choosing to show up again, even after disappointment, even after failure, even after betrayal, even after life gives you every reason to stop trying. Because if there's one thing I'm slowly learning, it's that self trust isn't built in huge moments. It's built quietly through promises you keep, through boundaries you create, through the risks you take, through forgiveness you finally give yourself. And truthfully, I'm still rebuilding too. I'm rebuilding my life. I'm rebuilding myself. And maybe some of you watching this right now are doing the exact same thing. So if you've been struggling with confidence, struggling with self doubt, struggling to trust yourself again, I hope you know something. The fact that you're still here, still trying, still searching for answers, probably says more about your strength than you even realize. And maybe the goal isn't becoming the person you used to be. Maybe the goal is learning to trust the person you're now becoming. And honestly, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever gone through a season where you stopped trusting yourself? And if you did, what helped you rebuild? And if these conversations about rebuilding, purpose, struggle, and figuring out life together are something you connect with, subscribing is one of the best ways to support the channel and continue being part of this journey with me. Because I have a feeling a lot more people are carrying this quietly than we realize.